All right, welcome everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Just want to ensure that your audio is settled before we start diving in. All right, and so I'll make sure that I type this out for people that are still trickling in, but welcome to today's user group meeting. Before we get started, I just want to point out that this is Zoom webinar. So if you haven't joined us for one of these before, the platform is obviously very similar in look and feel to Zoom meeting, but there are a couple of big differences. The first is that your cameras and microphones are disabled by default. So you don't have to worry about interrupting us, but it also means that you have to interact via the text channels. So you have chat available in Q&A. For any questions, we ask that you use Q&A just because it's much easier to manage. You can ask those anonymously and you can view existing questions. And for any kind of discussion or commentary, you can use the chat function. The difference there is that it defaults to hosts and panelists. So if you want everyone to see your message, just make sure that you select everyone from the drop-down menu there. So, well, I just want to say welcome to the September Edge user group. We're going to get an update here as to what's been happening in Edge and what to expect in the near future. After you hear from us, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of some members of the council and about how to best use the resources within Edge when evaluating international credentials. So to start us off, I want to give it over to our host, Jasmine. Jasmine?
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be with you today. I am currently the chair of the International Education Standards Council, and this is the body that oversees the country profiles and the credential advice that you find in EDGE. Joining me today on the panel are my colleagues, Nancy Katz, who's with Evaluation Service Incorporated in Chicago, and we also have two ACRO representatives, Julia Funaki and David Mihalia. These individuals are typically our liaisons with, General ACRO's office. This way, both the IESC and ACRO team keep, the information consistent so that our research is uniform and concise. For our newcomers to the EDGE user group, I'd like to give you a brief intro as to what is the council, what is this International Standards Council, and what is our responsibility. Well, the individuals serving on the IESC are all volunteers who are experienced professionals with incredible knowledge of world education systems, foreign credential evaluations, and international admissions. Members of the IESC have worked in higher education as well as private credential evaluation firms. We have each authored country profiles or been part of research projects that have culminated in publications sponsored by ACRO and NAFSA. So you can be confident that the recommendations presented in EDGE have been carefully vetted, discussed, and represent the varied viewpoints held within higher education. And the grading scales and the credential advice that are published within ACRO EDGE represent a majority consensus among members of the IESC. Just a kind of a quick look as to how IESC approaches changes to EDGE. This is how it happens. When education standards change, new credentials are awarded, or foreign education systems are reorganized, the IESC reviews and updates these recommendations. The credential advice are modified when new studies of foreign countries' education systems have been undertaken. Based on the research collected, new recommendations are developed and approved by the group of experts that serve on the IESC, and then they're published within the ACRO EDGE, providing advice for how to best understand foreign credentials in the context of the US education system. You will also receive alerts about these updates on the EDGE page on ACRO's website. We also have two fellows each year that join the IESC, and the fellows are the rising stars of ACRO, who join us to participate in a research project that is relevant to EDGE. Our former fellows, Rosalie Utley and, Loida Utley and Rosalie Hancock, completed the extensive research on offshore medical schools in the Caribbean. This is a report that is now available through ACRO. Our current two fellows are Rebecca Jacobs and Haley Klimenich, and they are currently working on the Bologna compliant degrees in the European Union. We're very excited to have Rebecca and Haley on board and looking forward to the results of their project. All right, so now let's look at our agenda for today. We're just going to share a couple of the recent updates we've made. We're very busy. We have a long list of country profiles that we are reviewing with some edits that will be done as we move forward. But today we will be sharing with you two updates, one on Bangladesh, the other on Canada. And then we will be looking at the questions that we have been receiving, and we will tackle some of those. These are questions that EDGE users have presented over the course of the past few months. There will be also discussion on the steps we'd like to recommend to our EDGE users to use when contacting EDGE, requesting information or suggesting updates. So we hope that these instructions will prove helpful for you. And following that, there'll be highlights on upcoming events that ACRO will be offering for the remainder of this year and early next year. And of course, we'll always wrap it up with questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them all today. And if not, they will be noted and placed on the IESC's agenda for future meetings. All right, so without further ado, let's move to our first item.
Okay, we'd like to start with a poll. Mike has just launched a poll for us, and we'd like you to look at these questions and answer. I'm going to read these aloud, but go ahead and answer as soon as you're ready. What segment of the audience do you represent? Institutional staff, evaluation service, government, or law firm? Second question, is this your first user group? Yes or no? And number 3, are you an EDGE subscriber? Yes or no?
I'll leave this for another, let's say 10 seconds.
Great, thanks, Mike. This helps us know who we're talking with.
Alrighty.
Okay, here we go. So 90% of you, or 47 out of 52 who responded, represent an institution. So welcome, we're glad you're here. And 5 of you, 10%, are from an evaluation service, and we're glad you're here as well too. For 10 of you, only 19%, this is your first EDGE user group meeting. And for the other 81%, or 42 out of 52, this is not your first meeting. So great, we're glad you're back and happy to have you here. Are you an EDGE subscriber? 100% of you guys are EDGE subscribers. That's wonderful. We're glad to hear it. So we're going to go ahead now and close this poll, and we're going to launch one more poll as soon as Mike is ready. And this poll is asking you about some of the functions of EDGE and how you use them. So question number 1, are you using the bookmark function in EDGE? Yes, no, or I have no idea what you are talking about. And number 2, do you read the EDGE alerts in EDGE? Yes, no, or I have no idea what you are talking about.
I'll leave this one open for another, say 10 seconds as well.
Thanks, Mike. I'm hoping we're going to see those 100% yeses. Let's see what we've got.
It's pretty mixed.
Okay. So yes, 35%, or 18 out of 52 say yes, you do use the bookmark function in EDGE. 33% say no. And 17 of you say, 33% say you have no idea what we're talking about. Well, we will talk about that a little bit. There's a bookmark function, and you'll see it on each page of EDGE when you're in there. So you can bookmark any topic, any credential that you're really interested in, and get back access to it easily. And then the second question, do you read the EDGE alerts in EDGE? 19 out of 52 or 37% said yes, 16 or 31% said no, and 17 or 33% said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, it is as mixed as it could possibly be, isn't it, Mike? The EDGE alerts are great because they tell you what's new and upcoming. It really gives you sort of this is the newest information. These are hot topics. These are things that are going on right now. So those alerts are really useful for you. We encourage you to think about using these and just explore. Don't be afraid. You're not going to break anything in EDGE. Go ahead and, go around there, play around and see what you find out and how you can have EDGE better serve your needs and better work for you. And as Christina just pointed out, it's a great way for you to be able to easily find things that you go to often or you really want to make sure you have easy access to. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and we'll start our latest content updates. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nancy Katz. Nancy?
Hello, good afternoon from a very cold, windy, and cloudy Chicago. We had every now and again, we either have questions or we ourselves are looking at an item within the EDGE database, and we have a question about, or somebody else has a question about a credential. The question came up about Bangladesh, the doctor of veterinary medicine. It previously indicated in EDGE that this was a 4-year program. That it was a 4-year program. However, someone asked, is it a 4 or 5-year program? We did research on this to discover that this did change, granted, over 20 years ago, but it's possible that no one saw the credential that had a question about it. And so after doing research, we did discover that it is now a 5-year program, which includes a 1-year internship. Now, it is possible that previous documentation, official documentation from universities in Bangladesh only called it 4 years because they may not have included the 1-year internship. Official information now clearly indicates it's a 5-year program, but 1 year of the 5-year program is an internship. We do consider this comparable to the first professional degree in veterinary medicine in the United States, and individuals can enter further education or employment. Note that for veterinary medicine in Bangladesh, as in many other countries around the world, admission to this 5-year program is high school graduation. Once again, also though, I do want to mention, make sure that the university you're looking at is in the right country. A colleague had said something about Dr. Veterinary Medicine and we were discussing it. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, this isn't Sri Lanka. We're talking about Bangladesh. It's very easy because some of the words in some universities have very similar titles, and it could be in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka. This one is the degree of Doctor of Veterinary Medicine in Bangladesh. Only a small handful of institutions in Bangladesh offer this degree. So just double check on the university website that they do offer this credential. Jasmine, back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Nancy. All right, now we're going to travel over to Ontario, Canada. And this is about the Bachelor of Education degree that we have added to the country profile under Ontario, Canada. And it's because we have 2 Bachelor of Education programs. One can be obtained as a consecutive degree or as a concurrent degree. So let's first tackle what we mean by the consecutive Bachelor of Education program. This Bachelor of Education degree within the consecutive program is a 2-year university course of study. It follows a 3-year Bachelor of Arts or Science in the province of Ontario, Canada. This Bachelor of Education degree prepares individuals to teach at one of 3 possible levels in the province of Ontario. and that those are primary or junior level. That means kindergarten through grade 6, or junior intermediate level, that is grades 4 to 10, or intermediate senior level, which is grades 7 to 12. The consecutive Bachelor of Education model represents 4 semesters of study, or 2 years, beyond a minimum of a 3-year bachelor's degree. Our credential advice for the consecutive Bachelor of Education is that it is comparable to a bachelor's degree here in the United States. So what you will probably see is a holder of a 3-year bachelor's degree followed by a 2-year Bachelor of Education degree. The Bachelor of Education itself will represent completion of a program that's comparable to a US bachelor's, so the 2 combined. The Bachelor of Education concurrent degree, as it says, means that both the Bachelor of Science or Arts and the Bachelor of Education are completed concurrent. Typically may take between 5 or 6 years of study. And the entrance to this program that is concurrent is based on completion of upper secondary school in Ontario, validated by the Ontario Secondary School Diploma. So again, this is a Bachelor of Education. It prepares the individuals to teach, whether at the primary junior level or junior intermediate levels or intermediate senior level. The only difference is that students can study this concurrent with their Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science degree program, and together they may it may take them between 5 to 6 years. The credential advice for the Bachelor of Education concurrent is also that of a bachelor's degree in the United States. So I hope this is sufficient information, helping you understand the routes that the Bachelor of Education can be obtained in the province of Ontario, Canada. Thank you.
Alrighty, and per usual, we are always encouraging our subscribers to send our team here any credential suggestions for review and potential inclusion into our database. When sending in these requests, we ask that you provide us with a sample document, front and back, as well as redacted, making sure to protect our students' names and date of birth, and really any identification numbers or codes that could trace back to them. Other information that we look for includes site sources and any links that you have, any other documents that can help us assess which institution the credential is coming from, what minimum entrance requirements are necessary to enter the program, and then the duration and description of the program, as well as what it will lead to, whether that's continued education or if it's a terminal degree that will allow you to start working. Next slide, please. Thank you. This leads us to a couple of exciting updates we want to share with you, as well as an opportunity to address a handful of form submissions that we've received. And this is just a kind reminder, that if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in our Q&A, and we will be sure to address them. At our last user group, we had an attendee ask if it was possible to add a field where attachments could be made when submitting forms online. And I'm happy to announce that we're currently working with our developers now to make this option available to you as soon as possible. Until then, we do ask that you continue emailing us those sample documents in reference to every single form that you submit. We are also looking to be more specific about what the Contact Edge and Submit and Update forms are for. We will be updating the form designs as well, but please do keep in mind that the Contact Edge form is really used primarily to express interest in starting a subscription, to ask questions about login, or maybe if you have an update to an Edge manager, or if you'd like to request an invoice to be resent. These are all questions that can be also directed to our email, edge@acro.org, as well. And these are just general and more broad questions, whereas the submit and update form is one where we hope that you can use it to ask more detailed questions or submit a detailed request really relevant to the page that you are submitting the form from. Next slide, please. And again, we cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much to those of you guys who have submitted requests for updates. We get such a large volume of form responses, and with each, we partner with our IESC team to conduct thorough research so we can give you a well thought out and researched response, and need be to make any edits and edge accordingly. With that being said, it can take a fair amount of time, so we really appreciate your patience as we sift through your form responses. And today we'll be touching on a few of those questions. Oh, thank you, Mike. Perfect. As we discussed, one thing AcroEdge is working on is making it possible for you to attach documents. But in the meantime, we do encourage you to send us emails at edge@acro.com with any attachments. On our slide here, there are two examples of questions coming from Katie at Youngstown State University and Natalie at Trustport Corporation. These are great examples of solid questions and updates to send in to us. Katie asks an equivalency question about the Doctor of Optometry credential in Ghana, and Natalie suggests that we add credentials to reflect the bachelor's and master's for design available in India. And she even offers to email over samples. If either of you guys are here watching, thank you so much. We do want those samples. They greatly help us in making our decision and also just understanding the context of the question that you're asking or the update that you're asking for. Oh, perfect. Our next slide could have easily been put up in our latest content update because we have added a new grading scale in Sweden. Thank you, Mark. From Texas State University, Mark sent over a request for the 6-scale system to be added into Sweden. After doing a bit of back-end research on our side, we agree that it would make a great addition to our database. So this is now posted and listed under post-secondary grading scales in Sweden. For those of you guys who are looking. Next slide, please. Awesome. Another great question that came in is from Wisconsin at Concordia University, from Kelsey. Kelsey, if you're here, thank you. She requests that the South Korean high school graduation equivalency examination be included in EDGE. Because this examination isn't exclusive to South Korea and is in fact offered by several countries, the IESC has prepared and approved a general statement on high school equivalency exams that goes as followed. Brace yourself, it's a little bit long, but it's got a lot of good information in there. Right. Secondary school equivalency examinations exist in a number of countries. These examinations are typically geared towards adults who were not able to complete secondary school. However, the circumstances of the student can vary. The examinations are often organized around a core set of subjects, such as language, mathematics, science, and social science as well. Passing the examination is a demonstration that the individual has achieved the same minimum standard of knowledge of a high school graduate, usually affording the student eligibility for entry into higher education in that country. Here in the US, there are 3 main options. We have the GED, the General Educational Development Test, the HISET, the HISET, High School Equivalency Test, and the TASC, the Test Assessing Secondary Completion, which are all conducted by private and independent, testing agencies. In other countries, however, they are typically administered by ministries or departments of education, frequently at the municipal or provincial, I cannot speak today, level. In Canada, it is known as a high school equivalency diploma, whereas in South Korea, referencing the direct question, it's referred to as a high school graduation equivalency examination. In the Philippines, individuals must pass the alternate learning system accreditation and equivalency test, and they are awarded the diploma in secondary education equivalency upon successful completion. That is our blurb. It will be added into these country profiles where high school equivalency examinations are offered. Next slide, please. And finally, this is a bit of a busy slide. We do receive a number of questions relevant to projects that are currently in the works. For example, and thank you again, Natalie, for post-Bologna credentials, 2 of our IESC fellows, Rebecca and Haley, that Jasmine had mentioned earlier, are currently heading a project on all post-Bologna credentials. Publication of their work can be expected after our annual meeting. We are also currently working hard on on our first degree laws project that will work to identify the first level credentials and education needed to enter this field per country. So I'm not sure if you're reading along with the slide, but these kind of answer our questions. And it shows that a lot of the questions that we do get are actually in the works right now in our back end. Now, as we transition into the highlights and upcoming events, I'm going to go pass the mic over to Dave.
Dave, you are still muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. We have a couple of free webinars coming up. The first one is all about the Cambridge International and Cambridge English divisions of Cambridge Assessment. And some of you might know that Cambridge exams have recently been included on the Common App. These are all COVID-19 driven changes, I'm guessing. They're also going to be launching an online transcript service for North America. So that is the first one. That will be Tuesday, November 30th. You'll notice up at the upper left, there's a QR code. I used it myself today, and it works beautifully. You can use it to keep abreast of these free webinars, and you can also register through the QR code. If we can move on to the Afghanistan slide, thanks. The Afghanistan webinar will be on Thursday, December 9th, and it's going to cover the issues affecting students, the events of 2021. Specifically, there's going to be best practices for documentation, which is problematic, as you can imagine. And there will also be a historical review of the educational system for people involved in admissions. So that is what I have to say about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dave. We're excited to announce a more recent publication of our Guide to Bogus Institutions and Documents that was released earlier this year in April of 2021. If you guys haven't gotten your hands on it, I highly recommend you check it out. We do have our QR codes in this portion of the presentation. So if you want to pull out your phone and scan at any point in time, it'll lead you straight to the different things that we'll be talking about. So in this instance, it'll lead you to a guide on those bogus institutions and documents. This is an awesome and incredibly relevant guide that discusses different forms of fraud within the education industry, including institutional fraud, diploma mills, and counterfeit documentation, all of which I'm sure in the span of your guys' careers, you've definitely seen. And also, if you've attended our sessions on countries of crisis led by Julia, our colleague here, you can testify to how critical knowledge of fraud, especially in countries whose education systems are fragile as it is, are. Each of the points, are elaborated within our guide as we take a deeper dive into transcript fraud, accreditation mills, secondary school fraud, fraudulent evaluation services, and bogus institutions. And this leads us into our upcoming event that we have going on into this next year. Please mark your calendars way in advance because on February 3rd, we will be partnering with some of our colleagues and authors of the guides, including Alan Nizell, Alan Contreras, John Baer, and George Gallen, to take a deeper dive into the Bogus Institutions and Documents Guide from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Again, that is on February 3rd. Eastern Time. This is a free webinar that we really encourage you to come to. Topics that will be discussed border what's already in the book, but also include how to handle these fraudulent documents, tips for how to prevent it, how diploma mills operate, as well as some interesting stories of some of the craziest diploma mill encounters that our colleagues have had there. So we hope to see you there. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Julia.
Thanks, Christina. I'd just like to say one more thing about that webinar. The people that are going to present, John Baer, George Gallen, Alan Nizell, and Alan Contreras, really are pioneers and have really done all of our trailblazing when it comes to a lot of this bogus credentials and diploma mills. So that is not to be missed. They've, other than George, I'm not sure about George Gollin, but the others have retired and may still be working here and there, but it's really great opportunity and a chance to hear from them. Next, I'd like to just point out our Gloria Nathanson Research Fund for International Education. This is something that we really encourage those of you who have really an itch to research or delve into something further, think about pursuing. We award up to $1,000 to support travel expenses, research materials, or any other costs that might be associated with you doing research on either a country or a profile, an update, any kind of white paper. Maybe you want to talk about education in crisis or refugees or fraud. Any of these things would be things that we're always interested in hearing from you, our members and our users about. So click on that QR code there and go in there and look at it if you'd like to see a little bit more about getting involved and doing something that's a little bit bigger, but would be greatly satisfying, I'm sure. So let's go on to Q&A, and Jasmine, I'll turn it on over to you for that.
Yes, thank you. So this is the fun time where we look forward to seeing what your questions are. So if you have any questions that have come up about EDGE country profile or some updates you want to share with us, please let me know, let us know. And if we can answer you today, we will. And if not, we will definitely take this up for the next meeting that the IESC has. And please type in your questions in the Q&A area. You can also raise your hand if you'd rather speak, and Mike will unmute you for that. And just to kind of, while we're waiting for questions, I wanted to just piggyback on something that Julia had mentioned, or Christina, about the webinar, the Fraud Busters, with Alan Ezel and Alan Contreras and John Bayer and George Gollin. Well, Alan Ezel, just for you to know, he's a retired FBI agent, and he headed the Bureau's diploma scam known as DIP scam. And for several years, they investigated diploma mills here in the US and around the globe. And he's an incredible storyteller. And George Gollin and him were very much involved in tracking down a major diploma mill that started in Liberia, St. Regis University. So these are really the epitome of sleuths in our field. Definitely looking forward to that presentation.
And so it's not in, there's one in Q&A. I'll just read this one in chat from Brandy. It's not directly related to EDGE, but I feel like the people here might be able to figure that out. And it's related to international admission. Our institution has a similar policy to most institutions regarding TOEFL scores, and we are trying to determine the point of reference from which this policy was created. And C's researched TOEFL and ACRO, but cannot find the guiding principles for policy development related to that. And basically, she's asking if anyone in the panel can offer which service would or puts out the guidance for this and where it can be located. And certainly if anybody in the attendance knows about it, you can feel free to pop that in there.
Thank you for that question. This is Jasmine. This is not an area that IESC is involved in, so I hope that any of our attendees who may be more closely involved in English language tests may be able to address this for us.
Yeah.
And I would also add to Brandy, I don't know that this has ever been like a policy that's been put out there officially by anybody. I know that in a lot of trainings and presentations, people will talk about the countries where they don't necessarily require a TOEFL score, the variations that they'll accept in lieu of TOEFL for English proficiency. I'm not sure. I think there's this idea that there's some policy out there that somebody has made in some official list And I actually think that's probably not the case, that this is more just information that's been passed on at different trainings and by different individuals, but not that there's an official source that lists those. Anybody else?
And if not, well, so I'll get to Andrea's question there. She's new to the site, as a student from Australia, and they've evaluated the transcript. The transcript shows credit points of 10, and we've given, or Andrea's institution has given 3 US equivalent credits. Can you explain how the distinction is made?
This falls under evaluation practices and methodology. And I think, Julia, this is probably a good segue to training programs that ACRO has, because again, this is not, when it comes to converting credits and so forth, this is not an area that IESC gets involved in. It's really looking at the credentials, the benchmark credentials that are awarded, that we evaluate, that we take into consideration and recommend placement equivalencies.
Right, and we do trainings every year, as well as have on-demand courses that an institution can look at to address their needs in professional development and training. And we certainly go into these sorts of issues at our institutes, at our international institutes. We do have one coming up, I believe, in February of this year, and that's really going to focus on international transfer credit. So we would love to have you look into those and look on our website for updates as to when those are coming in for registration.
And here's another more specific one from Chang. Is it possible to add Myanmar's education system and current situation to the webinar in the future?
I'm going to jump on this one. Thanks, Mike. I think that yes, and I think what you're talking about is basically the education in crisis webinars that we're doing, and we are planning to do a third one. And Myanmar has certainly been up there as one that we'd like to think about. I mean, sadly, the problem is, of course, that there are many we can choose from systems where there's a crisis in education. We did our first webinar on Lebanon, and we're doing this one on Afghanistan, but Myanmar is certainly up there as an option. And we're actually thinking that maybe we'll do a couple of different places that are facing crises. So who would that come from? I don't see anymore, but whoever it was, let us know. And if you'd be interested in being involved at all in that, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you.
Yes, that was Chang. If you go to the Q&A and look at the answer.
Great, thank you.
Find her info. This is another one that came through in the chat, sort of edge specific question. See, Avery says Edge has some great resources regarding recognition of institutions, but will there ever be an opportunity where a user can have an option to ask about the recognition of ones that are not found in the resources, or maybe a listserv where users can connect with the council and ask?
Christina, would you like to share about our new Google group?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, in our last slide, when we wrap up, there will be a QR code available, which will allow you to join our international activities Google group, which is kind of in place of our old listserv. And it's a community of everyone within our field sharing different news and asking different questions. And it's just a great way to get a lot of those questions answered from different colleagues around the area. I think that'd be a great place for this question. Oh, it's the second one. I'm looking at the screen now. There it is. Yep, right where the mouse is hovering. If you guys want to zoom in, it's real quick to sign up, very easy. And you can also adjust your settings to see the frequency of emails that you get, whether it's you want every single email coming in, which admittedly can be a lot, but you can also do like an abridged summary, so on and so forth. So we hope to see you in there.
And I'm sure Brandy probably sees it, but a few people have volunteered their TOEFL policies in the chat. So if you are interested in that, definitely check it out. And Katie, I actually just got your email as well. I'll take a look at that right after this and fix that. It seems probably somebody left the old link when they copied the event over. And that's it as far as I can tell for questions.
Thank you, Mike. Well, if we don't have any more questions or comments or thoughts, doesn't mean that you cannot share them with us after this webinar. Please feel free to follow the instructions that Christina shared. And if you have come across a credential that you don't find listed on EDGE, please be sure to redact it and share that with us, and any links to references or resources that you have discovered, then that would make it a lot easier for the IESC to pick up where you've left off with your research, to complete that and then make a decision about the credential for it to be included in EDGE. Let's see. And our next, we will have another webinar, such as the EDGE user webinar in December, correct? So we still have time. Well,
I believe it's December 16th.
December 16th. That's right. Thank you. Well, again, thank you to everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. And I just want to give a shout out to Christina, who's filling in for our friend Drew, and she's been really wonderful. I know this has been a daunting task, and you're doing a great job, Christina. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
And thank you, Julian, Dave, and Nancy. Really appreciate everyone and our audience and attendees. Thank you. Have a beautiful day and a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.